New edition of the Patriots Beat podcast here on the CLNS Media Podcast Network and on Patriots Press Pass. I'm Evan Lazar, joined as always by Alex Barth. An early edition of Patriots Beat here on Thursday due to Game 6 between the Celtics and the Warriors at TD Garden tonight of the NBA Finals. Alex is going to be there for the Sports Hub covering the Celtics game, so that's why we're doing this a few hours early. We're going to have a very special guest on later on in the show to talk Warriors Celtics during the Boston Sports Minute with us in just a little bit. But we're going to talk some Patriots here at the top of the show. And as we were off the air yesterday and in between podcasts here on Tuesday and Thursday, our schedule, the Patriots did sign a wide receiver, bringing in Lil Jordan Humphrey, formerly of Texas, the New Orleans Saints. Obviously, I spent most of his career there with New Orleans, and a player that had some intrigue coming out of the draft in 2019, a 6'4", big-bodied, another outside contested catch receiver, kind of like Devontae Parker and N'Keal Harry. Speaking of N'Keal Harry, Alex, what do you make of the Patriots signing Lil Jordan Humphrey, a player that at the time of the 2019 draft, I thought, okay, if they go later on in the draft at wide receiver, this might be a guy they could be interested in.
Yeah, first off, it's Lil, not Little. I liked him a lot coming out that year. He didn't do much his first 2 years, had a breakout year in 2018, caught 90 balls, 1,100 yards.
Yeah.
He was very raw. Again, he didn't play a ton in college, so I thought he was very raw. I haven't watched him closely with the Saints. I'm not sure where his development's at, but he's still relatively young. I mean, I still kind of see him as a project player, as a guy who can maybe get better. They've needed size in the wide receiver group for a while. I think he's probably somebody, as it's relevant to the Patriots, where does he fit in? He's probably somebody who competes for that last spot, right? If they're going to keep a sixth receiver, we've talked about Trey Wilkerson in that spot. Trey Nixon, Christian Wilkerson. We've talked about both of them in that spot. If they decide they want to go size with that spot, Devontae Parker gets banged up a lot. They want insurance there. They want another big outside guy, a red zone guy. You could maybe kind of see him as a third tight end if they're only going to keep Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry. He might give you some de facto depth there. I could see him being in the competition. Now, if that's not what they want, if they want the extra slot receiver, it's Trey Nixon. If they want the special teams, it's Christian Wilkerson. That's what hurts me with this one. I'd love to say Jordan Humphrey has a solid shot to make the team. He doesn't play special teams. Last year was his career high in special team snaps. I think he played about 17% of the Saints special team snaps last year. That's not a significant amount. So that doesn't mean he can't do it. Maybe they get him going. He obviously has the size to, be a factor covering kicks. He has some speed to be able to get down the field and cover kicks. He just hasn't done it, but he'll be a name to watch. I mean, I think he's an NFL caliber player. I don't know if he's a starting caliber player. I think he's a, back end of the roster, good depth, red zone, situational guy. I think he does provide some value there, but they have a lot of guys like that. And would they rather have the speed of Trey Nixon again, or the special team skills of Christian Wilkerson? That's what it's going to come down to.
Yeah, honestly, I look at this move as maybe a precursor to N'Keal Harry eventual departure here from New England, because you talk about Devontae Parker in that starting big X role. If they're going to have a backup to Devontae Parker and it's not going to be N'Keal Harry, a little Jordan Humphrey comes in and is sort of that skill set, right? That could potentially serve as a backup in that type of role. You mentioned maybe like a move tight end sort of look at him as well. I remember at Texas, he did run some vertical routes out of the slot. Maybe that could be a different look that he could get as well, to get some matchups against linebackers and safeties and just play basketball in the middle of the field with those guys. He's somebody, though, coming out of Texas, I remember studying his tape, and his feet and his wiggle, I guess, for lack of a better term, is a little bit better than what you would expect for a 6'4" guy. And I checked in with Nick Underhill, who used to cover the Patriots, now covers the Saints full-time down in New Orleans. And he said that little Jordan Humphrey has his moments, right? He's somebody that has flashes, that almost looks better than he actually is, right? Like he has moments where you're like, oh, this guy could actually become something in the NFL, still trying to figure out how to use his size at the NFL level, how to truly be that contested catch artist at this level. Maybe Devontae Parker is the perfect guy to get some of that out of him and teach him the ropes in that respect a little bit as well. But New Orleans, they wanted him back. They were interested in re-signing him and having him back. he wasn't healthy. He was working on getting healthy, and they actually were entertaining bringing him back, but it didn't happen. So I think that there's some N'Keal Harry ties to this move, right? I could definitely see this being a precursor to them saying, we need another big body guy on the outside. Now we have one in case Devontae Parker goes down, and we still want to use that role in some capacity. Obviously not a burner. He ran a really slow 40 time. He doesn't bring any sort of speed, but he does have that size and that ability to go above the rim and play big. And maybe they feel like they needed another version of that because N'Keal Harry is not going to be here. The one thing, it's not that they've acquired small wide receivers, but they've definitely gone a little bit more finesse with their wide receiver signings and acquisitions over the last couple of years. You know, Tyquan Thornton is 6 feet, 6'1". He's not small. Kendrick Bourne, Nelson Aguilar. We're not talking about Wes Welker. We're not talking about 5'8", 5'9" receivers, but none of those guys are necessarily known for their contested catchability either.
Right. So that's, again, it comes down to what do they want to do with that last spot? What do they want to do with that depth spot? It's a, like you said during the draft, it's kind of a flavor thing. He is a little redundant to Harry. I agree with you, but he's going to cost significantly less, which is probably why they made this move.
Yeah. Also somebody, as is everybody now, practice squad eligible. That's a nice practice squad player too. If you can get him on the practice squad, work scout team as well. Not only just being able to potentially back up Parker, but you could also have him mimic some of the other bigger receivers that you're going to have, that you're going to go up against, the 6'3", 6'4" guys on other teams. Now, a little Jordan Humphrey could potentially play a scout team role or something like that on the practice squad as well. So not sure he makes the roster, but definitely a scout team option in a practice squad option for the Patriots if he doesn't make the 53. Really quickly in the chat before we go to our Throwback Thursday segment, Alex, any belief to Julian Edelman leaving the door open?
No, he's trying to sell something. I don't know what it is. Yeah. It wouldn't make any sense at this point. No.
Yeah, Mike Giardi threw out there on Twitter yesterday that he retired because of the bone on bone in his knee. That doesn't just go away with rest. You know, I don't know. I tend to agree with you that in order to keep people on the hook, in order to keep people interested in the brand that is Julian Edelman, you got to tease a comeback every once in a while. Everybody does it, right? How many athletes do this all the time? And it stinks that that's the game, but that is the game that a lot of them play. And no, I'm with you. I don't think that there's any sort of credence to him actually coming back and playing for the Patriots ever again. All right. So let's debut this segment, a new off-season segment for us here on Patriots Beat. We're going to do what we call Throwback Thursday, because it is Thursday, where we're going to go through some of the Patriot greats of the last 20 plus years or so and break down some tape, talk about those players, and just reminisce about what great Patriots and great football players there were. Today, we're going to start with Patriots Hall of Fame inductee for 2022, Vince Wilfork. We're also going to get to Richard Seymour since he's going to go into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And then we're going to open it up to you guys and hear who you guys want us to break down and talk about. Well, let's start with Big Vince. And I pulled up a bunch of plays courtesy of our friend Fear the Beard on Twitter. You can see his handle there at the bottom. One of the better Twitter follows for Patriots fans looking for Patriots.
Let's just make sure. Let's give him credit. Let's make sure that that's what his
current
handle still is. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it is. He does get shut down by Twitter a lot. So we can go make sure and give him credit. But he was the one that put up this sequence of plays from the 2011 AFC Championship game here between the Ravens and the Patriots, which was easily one of Vince Wilfork's best games in a Patriot uniform. I think one of the things that stood out just going through the tape of Vince and pulling some of these highlights that we're going to go over here was what he talked about when we spoke to him following the induction or the news when it broke that the Patriots were going to induct him into the Patriots Hall of Fame. And that was his versatility. Like, he lines up everywhere in this game, right? Like, it's not just on the nose. It's not just over the center. He's playing 5 technique. He's playing the shade. He's playing the nose. He's playing just about everywhere on this defensive line, The pass rush ability really stands out. And then towards the end, easily one of the best at anticipating quick throws or screens out of a defensive lineman, especially nose tackle, that I've ever seen. You'll see the interception against the Chargers. I went back and watched it. That's not even a screen. That's just like a flare into the flat.
No, yeah, he just read it.
Yeah, that he just reads. Just a fantastic all-around force in the way that he plays. This one here, though, we're going to start with a third down play. Having a 300 and sometimes listed 325. I think he was closer to 400 pounds, honestly, at times when he played. Let's call him 375. But having a 375-pound defensive tackle that can stay on the field in all situations and on third down and rush the passer in this shotgun formation against Baltimore, it's pretty rare, right? And I think that a lot of people forget just how much juice Vince had, mostly as a bull rusher or pocket pusher, but he certainly could bring it in the pass rush as well as against the run.
Yeah, no, I mean, he was, again, we kind of talked about this during the draft, right? That, everybody's saying, well, why would you take a nose tackle high? They can only play 2 downs. So obviously, this is a different era in the game when Vince Wilfork played, but he kind of is a trailblazer, and he's the kind of guy, if he was in today's game, maybe even valued more highly than he was playing when he did. These guys just don't exist. You don't find these, you said 375. I think the number I've heard is he was like around 345 when he was in his prime. Yeah. You don't find guys that big who can move like he can. And it just creates so many unique mismatches. And Bill Belichick spoke a little bit about this when Vince got, when he got inducted in the Patriots Hall of Fame, and you'll see some of it. I don't remember if it's this exact play, but as we go through this, his ability to create mismatches and just move, he might not have been the one actually making the play, right? He might not show up in the box score, but we're going to go through plays where somebody gets a tackle for loss 6 yards in the backfield, but it's because Vince was able to move 3 guys out of the way.
Yeah, that's what this play is like, yeah.
Right, so, and then you could also apply that to the pass rush. He was able to occupy guys in the pass rush and open things up for guys. I mean, so many players he played with, Willie McGinnis, Chandler Jones, I could name 15, 20 different edge rushers, but that's what it is. You don't see defensive tackles of his size that could, force the offense to focus on him, right? Because if you're that big, normally you can't move. Maybe you need 2 guys to block him, but that guy's going to be where he is, and that's that, right? That wasn't the case with Vince. You had to, we talk about it all the time, like in the secondary, you needed to know where Ed Reed was, right? Or even at linebackers at times. Right now, when the Patriots played the Cowboys this year, we did a lot of, you need to know where Micah Parsons is, right?
Yeah.
You don't really do that. You don't really hear that with defensive linemen. I don't even know that you hear that with Aaron Donald, probably because he doesn't line up in that many different spots. But Vince Wilfork's versatility and his athleticism, he was a defensive lineman where teams needed to know where he was before each play and then keep an eye on him because he would move around and he could really cause problems.
Yeah, so on this play, this is a pass rush play. He's right here, shaded to the left side of the center. And you look at the bookend pass rushers on this play. It's throughout this game, it's Rob Ninkovich on one side, but it's Mark Anderson on the other side.
Mark Anderson.
Mark Anderson had a huge season. Remember, he had
and then ripped off the Buffalo Bills. He's a legend.
Yeah, he had double-digit sacks, and what you see
I think it was 12 and a half, right?
Just walking back the left guard here, all the way back into Joe Flacco, and you see him just put this guy on skates, Alex. And yeah, this is a one-on-one, and you can't block Vince one-on-one. And then obviously Mark Anderson comes in and cleans up the sack. You mentioned how many times Vince would occupy blockers or guys cleaned up. Mark Anderson was the cleanup sack king, right? Like how many of these types of sacks did he get in this season? But I just love watching Big Vince bull rush the left guard here and watch him just put him on skates and walk him right back. And that's a Vince Wilfork sack, right? Like that's not a Mark Anderson sack. That's a Vince Wilfork in your face type of sack right there.
Yeah, that second angle, a great look at. I don't know, is it just glitchy? Is this what we're doing, or can you play it straight through? It's showing up a little glitchy to me. But yeah, no, I mean, you see it right there where Joe Flacco, I mean, he doesn't really have time to get reset in the pocket. Vince, it's not just that he puts the guard on skates. Watch how fast he gets him back there.
Yeah.
Right? Look, Joe Flacco makes his initial read, and then boom. His offensive guard's already in his lap, and he has to readjust, and the whole play breaks down from there. Yeah, that's not something I wouldn't call it a coverage sack. right? That normally when the big guys are involved like that, it's a coverage play. There's a guy open right there at about on the 40-yard marker you see on the right side.
It's cover 2. And if he's able to reset here and get to the backside of this read, he's got that open guy on that hook route in between the two zone defenders. But Vince just doesn't let it happen, right? And that's
I see multiple. Right, there's multiple guys open there, but how. And by the way, shout out whoever in the chat. I didn't see that Edelman's playing defensive. Is he? Was he in this game playing corner?
Yep, there he is. This underneath slot there to your left. Yep.
But yeah, no, it's not just the bull rush, but it's how fast he got him back there.
Yeah, absolutely. So more plays here, and that's brute strength with the bull rush and things like that, but it's also the get off. And here's another play where you just see insane get off for a guy this size. So they're going to run this zone stretch play to the right. Vince is right there.
Basically lined up. So this is already 2 plays in. We've got 2 alignments.
Yeah, so this is him basically playing 3-4 end. So he's playing 5 technique here, right? And he's right over the right tackle and right guard. He's essentially playing the 5 technique straight up over the right tackle, and they're going to run a stretch play to his side, which I'm not so sure why Joe Flacco didn't check out and run to the other side.
Well, look, they're all built up there. They've got the tight end, they've got the fullback. This is just power on power. They think that they're going to match him.
Yep, this is the strong side, and Vince is playing strong side end. And look at how quickly he just gets into that gap, right? I mean, that's insane get off for anybody, but especially a guy his size. And we can see it here from the end zone angle. And you're going to see him kind of move out to that 5 technique spot, right? Lined up right directly over the right tackle. And what they're doing with this zone concept is everybody's stepping out, and the right guard is actually going to be the one that's going to try to block him. You cannot reach Vince Wilfork, right? Like this is a recipe for disaster, trying to reach Vince Wilfork right there. And this Baltimore offensive line was a good offensive line back in the day. This is a good group. You can't reach Vince Wilfork like that. This is him playing all the way out 5 technique, almost outside the tackle, and he's just able to shoot this gap. And at that size, moving at that pace, just forget about it. You're not going to be able to overtake him and move him out of the way here.
And I mean, if you want to talk about, the guy he beats here, and I think there's probably on Baltimore's end a miscommunication between the left guard and left tackle, but it looks like the right guard and right tackle. It looks like the right tackle, that's Michael Orr. It looks like they're trying to send him out to kind of get up and lead things down the field, get into the second level. The left guard he beats here clean is Marshall Yanda.
Yeah.
Marshall Yanda was he an All-Pro? He must have been. Yeah. He's
All-Pro for years.
7-time All-Pro.
Yeah.
And he beats him like a true freshman, playing as like a 5th string. Watch how clean he gets off on this 7-time All-Pro in his prime. I mean, Yanda's blocking him on the back shoulder.
Yeah.
That's just unreal.
Yeah, so I think a big part of the communication or the issue that breaks down here is Michael Orr. He's basically going to give Vince a forearm shiver on his way up to the second level, and the idea is that he's going to slow him down enough to help Marshall Yanda overtake the block, right? And his job is to kind of chip and then get to the second level. But Vince is such a behemoth, he's such a monster that the normal chip that the tackle gives in this type of concept, it's not good enough, right? Like you can't just you got to give him more than just a forearm. Like you got to give him a real punch here. He kind of tries to get him. You can see him try to kind of like hook his arm a little bit there. That's not good enough against Vince Wilfork. He's just going to go right through that. Like you said, Marshall Yanda, one of the best to do it at his position during his time in the NFL, a potential Hall of Famer, I think, at guard.
So, I was just going to say, so if you can pause it like right here, right there. It's really interesting how they set this up. And to me, this goes to like a bigger picture Patriots thing that we're talking a lot about with this team right now. Yeah. And they don't want guys to over pursue, get up the field, right? They just want to contain both against the run, against the pass. Look at this. They have 3 guys in here blocking. They have Ed Dixon, the tight end, is 84. 44 is Vontae Leach, and then Yanda. They have 3 guys in there blocking. The Patriots get there with 2 because it's just discipline. I don't know why Vontae Leach doesn't chip Vince and goes to Chandler Jones instead. Maybe he just didn't want any of that smoke. I mean, watch it. They double Chandler Jones here. Michael Orr skips up. Vince Wilfork, I mean, obviously it's great get off, but then watch, he just stays home, right? Yeah. He knows I'm 4 yards in the backfield. I'll let him come to me. And that's just a heady play too. It's really, you hear guys talk about this. If you shoot the gap too well, it's very easy to over pursue because you're not used to being in that spot. You're rarely back there that quick. He gets back there. The back's right in front of him. He knows exactly what to do. He says, you're going to have to go backwards or run around me.
Yeah.
It's just a great play. And Chandler Jones too, shout out to him here. Double block, still holding the edge, not giving I think that's Ricky Williams, right? Yeah, it is. Not giving Ricky Williams anywhere else to go, and you're not going around Vince Wilfork. You're just not.
Old time Ricky Williams. That's Mark Anderson, by the way, not.
Oh,
Chandler
is it?
Jones.
Oh, I thought it was Chandler Jones.
Yeah,
I thought it's like 95. Oh,
yeah,
because Chandler Jones was drafted the next year. You're right.
Yeah. Pre Chandler Jones 95. All right. So I love this play because this is another pass rush rep here on 3rd and 15. 3rd and 15, and he's on the field, right? Like that to begin with is just ridiculous. But what I love so much about this rep, Alex, is the hand usage. A little arm over move from Vince Wilfork. This isn't just straight bull rush like we saw the bull rush earlier. This is a little bit more nuanced, a little bit more pizzazz. See that arm over move, and then he just swallows Joe Flacco. This was the one sack he had on the game, and there's Julian Edelman playing corner again, by the way, in the slot. But I love the little pull forward arm over move, kind of like a snatch move there, and he has the arm over finisher. This is a little bit of nuance from Big Vince. Like you're not just walking somebody back into the pocket, you're getting around the blocker here.
Well, I would say let's just look, and you kind of touched on it before, but let's look at this big picture, what this is. 3rd and 15 in the first quarter, backed up inside the opponent's red zone. It's a 3-man rush, and the nose tackle gets a sack.
Yeah.
You just don't see that. That doesn't make sense, right?
Yeah.
Right. They only rush 3 here. And that's a pretty, all things considered, I would call that a pretty conservative rush pattern. Like I don't think they stunted or anything, did they? Everybody just kind of moves.
Yeah.
Right. And he, they have 2-3 guys to block him if they want. He blows right by, was it Matt Burke, I think was their center that year?
Yeah.
Matt Burke, yeah. Right. Yeah, who, again, is another good offensive lineman. I think he was he ever an all-pro? Yeah, he was once. And yeah, Vince gets right by him, 3-man rush, your nose tackle gets a sack on 3rd and 15. That's different. Not every team can do that. It allows you to do a lot of things different defensively when you have a guy in the middle who can do what Vince is doing right here.
Yeah, that first to contact, you can see that right arm kind of get in and under Burke there. That's kind of what establishes that momentum to then pull him. He kind of pulls him forward and then goes over him like that. And I think Yanda is just he's playing right guard, and he's probably supposed to help a little bit more on this. But he's just in amazement that Vince is in the backfield so quickly, right?
Well, it almost looks like Vince jukes him out a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, this is just ridiculous that a guy that size can move like that, right? I mean, this is silly. All right. Next play here. I believe that this is the 3rd down. So this one is kind of similar to the play we were talking about earlier on that zone stretch play. This time they try to trap him, and it's he's right up over the nose, and they try to trap him and pull the guard the other direction. And you're not going to trap Vince Wilfork. Forget it, right? They try to get him here, and it looks like there's maybe a little bit of a pause or a miscommunication. I'm going to fast forward because we have the end zone angle from the right guard, or the left guard. Seems like a little bit lost here, right? I don't know exactly what he's looking at. Maybe he's worried about Mark Anderson there in the B gap, but they're trying to pin him down, right? They're trying to trap him and then pull the guard through, and he's just too quick off the ball and too big. There's no chance. And this is another play. We talk so much about his play strength and his size, but just that initial snap quickness right there at 345 is just something else.
Well, this is an interesting one too, because I wonder if some of what throws him off, and let me just see kind of where all the blockers go. This is classic. I don't want to say classic Belichick, but this is a great Belichick play here. Look who they have up on the line inside of the outside linebackers, Patrick Chung, the safety.
Yeah.
Right. And it almost to me kind of throws everything out. Again, it's 3rd down for the game. There's 3 minutes to go here. All of that. You have your nose tackle on the field. You have your safety up in the box. They could just do this whole defense was so flexible. But yeah, you watch Vince kind of win on the inside. And it's kind of like that one earlier where, well, how do you block him here? Because normally in this situation, the center is going to just be able to take the nose tackle out. And it looks like they pulled somebody here, and I think that's where it missed. Maybe
they're
trying to crack them on the pole,
they're running power, right? Patrick Chung is
right.
The puller is pulling to Patrick Chung. And the idea is to just basically pin Vince Wilfork down with the guard and kind of just wash the whole play down and then fold it over, right? And pull the guard through. But the problem is that Vince, he's not a normal nose tackle. Like this get off here is so quick that the guard and that little bit of hesitation, I think what really throws it off here is Anderson lining up here in the B gap. He doesn't want to just let him go, right? And so he's got a little bit of hesitation there. And just that moment lapse of hesitation that allows Vince to just shoot this gap right through. If this play gets off, like if Vince gets washed down, like they got this blocked, right? The tight end's kicking out Ninkovich. The guard's going to pull through and hit 25 here, Patrick Chung.
Look, there's nobody in the middle of the field there. They're going to go. Yeah. They're going to go. It's just a ref. The other thing I'll say here, and this is, again, what separates Vince. Sometimes those big guys, we see this. If you just knock them, you don't have to necessarily like block them traditionally, but if you just knock them, they'll fall over. They're not the best on their feet. And maybe that's what the guard's trying to do here. You see how he kind of gets into his ribs?
Yeah.
I wonder if he's just trying to push him over. For his size, Vince had ballerina feet. He's so good on his feet. He's so sturdy. He's so athletic. You have to actually block him. You can't just try to knock him over, which I think is what their plan was there. Instead, he blows the play up. And I mean, look at the situation here on the top. This was
situation.
Right. I know ultimately, because this is the Sterling Moore game. I know ultimately the Ravens get another shot, but this really should have been the game right here.
Yeah, it's just crazy because, like you said, with the guard, the momentum of the play should wash out the nose. Like you don't normally have to get a ton of the nose tackle here to get this play off, but he's just too big. Like he's just too big. He's just too strong here, and he's already halfway by him too, which obviously doesn't help. But most of the time when you're in this position, you can just push him, right? And just kind of wash him down and get this play off. But he's already 2 yards into the backfield by the time they even make contact on him. It's just a heck of a display of athleticism for a guy that size. I think this is another pass rush rep here. Just pushing the pocket.
So this is, I think, the next play.
Yeah, late in the game, 4th down, late in the game. And he just, again, walks the center right back into Joe Flacco, nearly sacks him, causes this throwaway, similar to that first pass rush rep. But the center, I mean, come on, like he just doesn't stand a chance. They singled him a couple too many times in this game, right? Yeah. I mean, they just don't. You don't see guys nowadays a lot of the times that can walk NFL interior offensive linemen into the backfield this quickly. Like this is not, I mean, this is to Mississippi, right? And he's in the backfield. It's quite a play here by Vince.
Yeah, and again, it strings together too. It's complementary football. They're forced into an obvious passing situation here in a clutch spot because of the play that what he did on the play before. And I think he cited this 2-play sequence as like the plays he was most proud of or stood out most to him in his time with the Patriots or something like that. Yeah. And it's kind of like that first play we looked at. It's not just that he pushed him back on skates, which is impressive enough. It's not a coverage play. He gets him right back there. I mean, it's a fast rush. He gets on him like you'd see a speed rusher coming off the edge, same amount of time.
Yeah, and again, here you see the back coming out of the backfield on Gerard Mayo there underneath. It's got to step on Mayo if Flacco's got a second, right? That's probably where the ball goes here if Flacco has a second to do something with it, but he just doesn't. Here's another play that Vince pointed out in that sequence, right? Just 2 gapping, coming off the blocker. Not a tackle for loss or anything like that, but just another 5 technique. Like here he is playing end again, right? He's out here 3-4 end, coming out, just hold up the point of attack. The fullback even tries to get him out of the way a little bit. He's just a movable object. But I want to get to the screen. So sorry that the video quality is not great on these, pulling these old clips off of YouTube and stuff like that.
It sucks that these are old. Like I feel like this wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, it was a long time ago now. I don't think there's anybody that anticipated screens better than Vince. And this is one of his highlights, right? You have this little tunnel screen, and he just absolutely lights up the receiver. His ability to read screen and anticipate screen and how quickly he can react to it was insane. I mean, this is just such good block recognition. It must have been something that he saw, with the footwork with his eyes, or maybe he's looking through to the quarterback and seeing the quarterback's kind of cadence. But I mean, how do you read this any better than this?
You don't. And then obviously the hit is, I mean, this is a top 3 Vince Wilfork play. I think everybody thinks of the technique too. Again, for a defensive tackle to have that technique on a receiver in the field of play, that's not something he probably practiced much, but yeah, you'll see it right here. You see the quick recognition. He pulls off the block, comes across. It goes to the athleticism too. I think it's one thing to be able to read the screen, but to be able to read it, change direction as quick as he did, get himself in position, get his body in position. He has to turn his shoulders. I mean, that's a lot of movement in a very short period of time for a guy that big to handle all those movements. Again, it's rare. It's rare. You just don't see it.
Yeah, it's insane. And I think the best part about all these clips is like, we haven't shown a ton where he's just being big. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like he's just a big dude and it was hard to move him and stuff. Like, there's so much athleticism and there's so much explosiveness to his game as well. But that ability to read this screen is just ridiculous. And then here comes the pick to wrap it up here against the Chargers is next in this sequence. And again, I remember this is almost like a little screen in the flat. This is not a screen. Like, the running back is just running a check down pattern into the flat. And there's Vince just picking it off. Who has the faster 40 time, Alex? Me or prime Vince Wilfork? I'm going prime Vince Wilfork.
Yeah, it's Vince.
Yeah, he had that initial burst down, but it's just, look, he knows he's not going to get there most likely to the quarterback because the ball comes out so quickly, and he just jumps this route. Like, it's just like a corner in an underneath zone, just like jumping the route, as a 345-pound nose tackle. It's like the linebacker, popping out and jumping out and jumping a route underneath the defense. Like, this is exactly what this is. And what a play this was. I remember this one watching it live. This was all sorts of fun. I
remember a lot of these watching these live. He was a fun player to watch.
Yeah, be moved. And this was a player that really had a ton of athleticism for his size. And next stop, Canton, Alex?
Should be. We'll see. They're not great with defensive tackles, but we'll see.
We'll see. All right. Well, that was a fun segment. We're going to keep doing those, and we're going to continue to break down some of the Patriots greats of yesteryear and look back at some of these Throwback Thursdays. Thanks for Vince Wilfork for giving us plenty.
We didn't have the butt fumble in there. That was the one. I mean, it's the same thing. We showed him pushing guys back a lot.
Yeah, we didn't have the butt fumble. That's my fault. Oversight on my part, but everybody's seen the butt fumble like 1,000 times.
Right.
So I wanted to show some different things, but that does it for the Patriots portion of the show, because we have a very special CLNS guest and CLNS crossover here for the Boston Sports Minute. We're going to bring in Bobby Manning, the Patriots, the Celtics beat reporter for CLNS Media, to talk about Game 6 during the Boston Sports Minute. We don't normally have guests for the Boston Sports Minute, so this is exciting, Bobby. Thanks for doing this.
Oh, I'm very excited. Big fan of you guys' show. Your coverage have been big inspiration to me, and it's been great having Alex at the Garden the last couple of weeks to chat and talk Celtics, so I'm excited to do it here as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can go and check out Bobby's work on clnsmedia.com, as obviously, and then on Celtics CLNS, post-game shows, live reports from the Garden, the whole 9 yards there. Bobby's been out in San Francisco, which I'm very jealous about, and been traveling with the team a little bit during the NBA Finals as well. But Bobby, I think the number one question on everybody's mind, and where I wanted to start with this, because before we get into the X's and O's and kind of break down this matchup in the game tonight, are the Celtics just gassed, right? Because I think we were talking about this on Tuesday during the Boston Sports Minute. If they're just gassed, like if they've just played too many games, back-to-back series with Game 7s against Milwaukee, and we lost Bobby. Well, he'll be back in a second.
Keep going.
But nothing else matters, right? Like nothing else matters in terms of X's and O's or rah-rah speeches or anything like that if the Celtics are just gassed, Alex, and this is just kind of the end of the line.
Yeah, I want to save my take because I want to get Bobby's reaction to it. I don't know if you got to text him or whatever. I think what you are starting to see, though, some of this, and I think this goes to what you said, is when the Celtics, they had a chance to close that Bucks series out in probably less than 7 games.
Yeah.
And they obviously didn't do that. I would even say the Miami series, even though they were.
Yeah, the game 6 at home against
Which
Miami.
one were they down 3-2? One where they were up 3-2.
They were down 3-2 in Milwaukee, but they had game 6 at home against Miami to wrap up the series, and then went 7.
So I would say in both, even if they were up 3, even if they were down 3-2 in one of them, I think they had chances to win those series in less than 7 games. And at the time, I think I think a lot of fans were eager to kind of just wish it away as well. They still won the series. What does it matter?
Yeah,
this is what it matters.
Yeah.
Now you get to this point and you've just played so much basketball in such a condensed period of time versus the Warriors, who I think only got past game 5 once, I believe, throughout these playoffs. So I think you're kind of seeing that play out, where I don't want to say the Celtics are poorly conditioned, but they've simply played so much more than the Warriors have over the last 2 months. So I'll let Bobby answer the fatigue question first before I give my take.
Yeah, Bobby, how worried are you about the fatigue thing?
Can you hear us?
I don't know if you can hear
us. We got you, Bobby. You're good. Just talk.
I think you guys can hear me. I can't hear you.
You're not wearing your headphones. Put your headphones in. He was wearing headphones before, right?
Yeah, I thought he was too. Well, we'll figure it out. But
all right.
The fatigue thing definitely does worry me. Sometimes the software here has some trouble when we pull in multiple people. We'll figure it out with Bobby. But yeah, the fatigue thing definitely worries me. I also wanted to ask him about the Andrew Wiggins aspect of this series as well. But I'll just give your fatigue take until Bobby gets back.
Well, no, that is my fatigue take. I have a bigger picture take on kind of what they need to do going forward, but that is my fatigue take. This is what they get for, early in that Miami series. Was it game 1 or game 2, whatever it was, they threw away for not being able to close things out against Milwaukee at home. They've played extra games to their own fault. They've had games they could have won that they've lost, and now you're seeing it catch up to them here. And I do think, and not just physically, I think mentally they're gassed too. This is a very high pressure situation they've been in for weeks now. I think that takes a lot out of you as well.
Yeah, look, it's funny because I was at game 6 against Miami, and I remember thinking to myself, like, I'm not so worried about game 7 in Miami. Like, I think the Celtics are the better team, and usually in game 7s, the better team wins out, right? Like, that's usually by that point in the series, the better team comes to the top. I wasn't worried about them advancing to the finals at that point. It just felt like they really could have used it. And at the time, it was Robert Williams, right? He was really kind of the poster of it all, of saying, Rob's definitely needs a minute. Marcus Smart was really banged up at that point of that series as well. And it felt like a huge opportunity lost to get some rest. The Warriors, I believe, had already wrapped up their series at that point against the Mavericks. So they were already at home on the couch with their feet up, resting before the finals kicked off. And the Celtics played another game. And it was not just any other game. It was a game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals on the road, which is obviously a ton of energy put into a game like that. And hopefully it's not catching up to the Celtics. What's your big picture take?
Well, just to something you just said, because I want to see if we can stall and get Bobby back here. To what you just said, we didn't think they were going to make the finals, and just wanted them to win the series, right? I think that's exactly the point, because I think they might have had that mentality.
Yeah,
they haven't been through this before. It's just win, and ultimately you want to win at all costs. But until you get to this point, I think it's kind of hard, because I underestimated at the time too. This is me. This is you. This is fans. I think this is the team. Right. You want to win the series, you win the series. I think when you go through this a couple of times, like the Warriors have, you start to understand the bigger picture of it. Well, it's not just winning the series. It's imperative we win it in as few games as possible. We don't want to gift the other team games, even if we think we can win it in 7. It's still going to catch back up to us, right? And I think that's what you're seeing here, where the Celtics, again, those 2 7-game series that probably didn't need to be 7-game series are starting to catch up to them.
Bobby, we got you?
Yep.
Awesome. Good. There we go. All right. So you were out at practice yesterday, I'm sure, Bobby, and you've seen the team and heard a lot from the team over the last couple of days. Are you worried about the fatigue factor of the long playoff run coming to an end here?
No, and I don't like the fatigue talk. That worries me. I said the F word flying around after game 5. This team's had a short rotation all season. They haven't been a team that's rested much, that's had depth. to get Tatum and Brown spells here. It almost felt like an excuse to me after Game 5. I don't know why Ime went there. That's not his style typically. So they have.
Well, is it true? Do you think it's true?
I think in that game specifically, Ime cut down the bench to a level that hurt them in the fourth quarter. I don't think this is a culmination of a long playoff run. I mean, of course, they're banged up. They've been through a ton of minutes here, but so have the Warriors, so have pretty much any team that makes it this deep in the playoffs. And these are guys in their low 20s. The concern is that Ime felt Grant, Derek White, and Peyton Pritchard were unplayable in the fourth quarter. So you effectively had to put your starters in at the 10-minute mark and push them the whole rest of the way. And that's when you saw the air balls. The missed free throws were weird for sure. This hasn't been a great free throw team in the postseason, as we've seen, but that was a next level, missing 10 in a 10-point loss. So all those things are concerning, but I'm not just going to chalk it up to them being tired. That just doesn't make sense to me, given what we've seen from them this year.
Well, so then what are you chalking it up to?
I think it's the fatal flaw of their team, the decision making and the lack of one great ball handler facilitator to really calm them down when runs get away from them there. And the worrisome thing if they lose here isn't that they blew it or they gave it away or they're not going to have another chance to get it done here in coming years. It's that their plan right now as a roster, as a team, is putting the ball in Brown and Tatum's hands to be these playmakers, these facilitators for the entire offense. And you've seen great growth this year, certainly with Tatum, but in key moments, are they going to be too inconsistent in that role that you're going to be this really streaky offense that gets stagnant at times and at other times is whipping the ball around, making magic happen on that end? I mean, they're the top assist rate team in the playoffs, which is pretty impressive given that formula that they're using. But we've seen these stretches, especially in fourth quarters, where they completely capsize as an offensive unit. And you have all these ball handlers. You can probably count 6 guys on this roster who have the pedigree to make plays, but not one of them steps up in these big moments. And I think the most worrisome thing of all is that they're all talking about their different strategies, whether it's Brown pushing the pace, or you see what Tatum's doing, being more methodical, and Smart begging for the ball, asking, to help out in those circumstances. Yeah, it's like you have 3 cooks in the kitchen and none of them can make the meal. And again, it doesn't give me a lot of hope that they're going to be able to get this done right now.
It's
so
kind of
let me ask you this. Just because you talk about the decision making and how sometimes they're so electric as an offense. After Game 4, and maybe I wasn't watching for it as closely as I should have, but after Game 4, a couple guys, Ime and a couple players, talked about the lack of movement off the ball, and so that that kind of, I went back, I looked, and there were some instances where they really weren't moving off the ball, and then I think, all right, well, in Game 5, they're all aware of this, they're going to fix it, and I don't know how many possessions where the ball handler comes up, the big, whoever it is, Rob or Al, sets the screen. And if the screen works, great. They go to the basket or kick it out. If the screen didn't work, you have 2 guys in the corner just standing there. You have 1 guy on the wing just standing there, and it essentially becomes 2-on-2. Is that something you've noticed? Why do you think they're not moving off the ball as much as they were earlier in the playoffs? If it's something you think they can get back to?
I don't know why. I really don't. And I think part of it's that they get clogged up in the half court. Like, it's not a place where they've moved well this season. I think the turnaround was when they started turning up their pace and getting to the next level as a defense allowed them to get out on the run a lot more often. In the half court this year, you can go back to their worst stretches in the winter. They were not a team that moved actively off the ball. Warriors, of course, the opposite of that, just how they function offensively. They're more of a strict pick and roll team that doesn't have outlets at the basket, really, when you think of Rob in his state right now and Al, who really hasn't been a rim threat all year. The drivers are getting cut off at the rim, so I think that's certainly part of it. Like, I don't think they view the rim as an area where they're going to be successful right now, given the help defense that's there for the Warriors. And you're effectively just trying to produce jump shots, which with this team has been a formula for success. Like, I think it's underrated how great of a 3-point team they've been through this whole run, because they produced high quality looks, especially the secondary shooting options. But when they go cold, you can end up with situations like the end of Game 4 there, where you take 9 straight jump shots to close the game and you only make 2. So it's not a great formula for success. I know we talk about the 3 levels, like the rim, the mid-range, and the three. You can do it with rim and three. You don't need the mid-range, but you cut out the rim and you're just relying on the three like they are right now. I think the Bucks looked at them and said, we'll live and die by the Celtics shooting the three, and they ultimately died. But the Warriors have kind of done the same here, and they've lived, and they're right on the verge of a championship because of that strategy.
Bobby, Alex and I, off the air, on the air, we've gone back and forth all year about Marcus Smart. And Alex's team Marcus, I am eating a little bit of crow in this playoff run, I'll admit it, but I've been critical of Marcus in the past and his propensity to just want to shoot all the time. Like, it does feel like sometimes he just takes too many shots. But you were mentioning earlier about the facilitating and not having a great ball handler to facilitate. He's the point guard, right? Like, it isn't. So moving forward with this team, and I'm not saying trade Marcus Smart, but I think there is a faction of Celtics fans, and I'm sort of in this boat, that would like to see them have a Rajon Rondo, prime Rondo kind of facilitator at that point guard spot instead of Marcus Smart. The defense is awesome. The hustle is awesome. He does get hot sometimes from three, and he can score at times. But where do you stand right now on Marcus's fit? And as you mentioned, Tatum and Brown being primary ball handlers and not having that true pass first point guard at their disposal.
Well, there's some pitfalls to their system as a team, like how they're trying to produce, because they're going defense first. And obviously Smart's a huge cog in that system, and it guides them and calls out plays and allows them to rack up the amount of stops that they can on that end. And, both ends of the floor are connected. So when they're rolling defensively, they can really turn that into offense. And that's what they want to do. There are some issues with him offensively, though. Like, how often have we seen in this series the passing sequences end with him shooting the ball? Game 4, especially there at the end. And it's never a great result when these long passing sequences end with him launching a three. I've been disappointed with him in this series. I really have. Tatum's gotten a lot of the flack, right? I think Smart should be right up there with him because he's taking risks. Like, I see Tatum taking the steps to protect the ball more and trying to be more careful and attempting to clean up with this mess of an offense that they've had throughout this series. I see Smart taking more risks, whether it was game 1, him going behind the back into that layup and he made it and you're like, great, they win the game there, but what are you doing? Last game, he's throwing lob passes into the post. You have this turnover issue, and you're throwing the ball from half court into the post over bodies. There was another play where he got downhill in, I believe it was game 4, off a misdirection with Tatum, and he had a wide open lane to the basket, and he just kind of threw it to Rob, with Rob being tightly covered by the big man. The decision making from this team right now, it's like they're blind out there sometimes on these plays. Like, they're not seeing where the help's coming from. I think they're baffled sometimes by the different looks that the Warriors throw at them. And it is disappointing, Evan, that Smart's not the guy to solve this. I asked him after, I believe it was game 3, what he can do, what Derek can do to solve this, because they're the point guards, right? You would assume the best ball handlers on this team. And again, to go back what I said at the beginning of our segment here, I worry that these guys don't necessarily trust each other to go all in on that role. Like, Tatum's obviously going to have the ball the most. Game 4, I felt like they lost Brown down the stretch after a sensational start. There's sequences, I think, where they lose Smart and don't defer to him when that would be the smart thing to do in some of these late game circumstances, because I still trust him the most as their steadiest ball handler. But when you see some of the lapses he's had late in this series, I think trust sometimes becomes an issue with this offense, whether it's trusting open shooters to make their shots and sometimes taking it themselves. That was the problem earlier in the year, I would say, more than now. But now I think guys deferring to the other ball handlers on the roster, getting off the ball, which Tatum had some success with after halftime when they went on that run, and deferring to the other ball handlers and letting other guys who are getting less pressure make a play. That, to me, I think is what makes them more inconsistent than anything else. And some people look at Ime and say, call a play, like, call timeout, slow this thing down. But he really doesn't want to do that. And it doesn't make sense, but I get him wanting to be consistent in this theme this year of really letting these guys run a free-flowing offense, not being the coach who's on them every single play with play calls and, again, slowing the offense down. They want this to be fast. So there are definitely spots where he should be stepping in with some play calls, I think, with a feel for the game. But I think an underrated story in this series so far is that Curry's had a better feel for the game from the sideline than Udoka has.
Part of it too, and Ime was asked about what you just said about, not calling plays, and that's who he's been all year, and he doesn't want to deviate from that, and I respect that. You mentioned, though, kind of working through the doubles and getting the ball to the open player. I think part of the reason they're here and part of the reason they get out of this, or part of the way they would get out of this, right? I actually thought game one, Jason Tatum was excellent. I really did. I know he only scored whatever it was, 12, 13 points. But he had 13 assists, and if you go back to the end of that Miami series, Miami in game 6 started doubling him, and he really had trouble with it. They just a straight up double on the catch. They're blitzing a second defender, and he seemed very flustered. He turned the ball over a number of times. He was forcing up shots over 2 defenders, all of that, and that worried me. He came back in game 1 for the finals, and he handled it very well. He was a distributor. He was letting other people make plays. He was finding the open man. Guys were hitting their shots. I thought coming away from that game, because a lot of people said, wow, the Celtics won without Jason Tatum scoring. Like, what's going to happen when he starts scoring? And I remember thinking, well, no, if he does just what he did, they're in good shape. And some of the narrative, too, became, from people who maybe don't understand the game as deeply. I think some of the narrative became Jason Tatum had a bust of a game in his first finals appearance. And that is an incorrect analysis, but that was certainly out there. And I don't know, consciously, subconsciously, whatever, I almost feel like he's taken that to heart, because he's kind of regressed in terms of how he's handled the double team, bad passes out of the double, putting up shots early or shooting through the double, all of that. He's gotten back to it at times. And look, if he's going to move the ball, guys have to hit the shots, right? Late in game 4, I actually thought he handled the double well. Marcus Smart misses 2 open threes. What are you going to do? He has to hit the shot. But to me, if they want to come back in this, Jason Tatum, they need game 1 Jason Tatum back. As good as he looked in game 4 at times, and he had that big scoring total, or was it game 5 or whatever it was that he lit it up, right? I think they need game 1 Jason Tatum back to win this series. That's not the whole thing. Guys then need to hit their shots when he finds them open. But I think the way they beat this Warriors team is with Jason Tatum being a distributor.
Yeah, for sure. And to be a distributor, I think you have to get to your spots on the floor, which he's really struggling with. Again, I'll give him credit for that game 1, just like you. I'm not getting on him because he's not scoring and he's not giving you the 46 from game 6 against Milwaukee. You're going to play the game how you're covered, and they are selling out on him, just like a lot of teams do. So I think that distorts his stats and makes it tough to evaluate him just based off numbers. You look at his process, and he is trusting guys. His passing is at another level from earlier in the year. Like, he would not have been capable of having a 13 assist game during the winter. So you're going to give this team, win or lose, credit for developing him through the whole course of this year to where you can have this level of an impact on a game without scoring. And even game 4 where they lost, where he was struggling in that game to shoot too, like, you see him chasing that loose ball down to the bench into the backcourt. You see his defense through this run, the rebounding, 7 a game. The other areas of the game where he's impacting have been significant. But right now, it's, can you get to the spots on the floor to facilitate most effectively? And you see him at the rim right now. When you're struggling to make it the rim like he is, I think that limits you immensely as a playmaker. And that has over the last 3 or 4 games here where he's piled up the misses in there. His 2-point percentage is just abysmal right now. And so you can pass out on the perimeter, you can pass in some pick and rolls outside, but if you're being forced to the half court line, you're losing clock. You're not able to get into these long passing sequences that they need to get quality looks. And again, watch tonight, because you're going to see it tonight in stretches. You just know you are. They're sometimes starting their sets with like 13 on the shot clock. There was a play, I forget what game it was, where he had Curry in the mismatch and he spun out toward half court as the clock was going under 5. So he's at half court with like 4 seconds left on the shot clock. And it's just one of these instances where you're like, are they just running blind on offense right now? Like, do they just sometimes lose feel for the clock, for where the defense is, for where their teammates are? And you hear them too talking about spacing off the ball, as you said, the movement. Alex, it's not there. Guys are getting on top of each other, and it's making it even easier for the Warriors to collapse on Tatum. So there have been times in this series where I think Tatum's to blame, but especially last game, he had no help whatsoever. I mean, right now, their shooters aren't making shots. Their secondary ball handlers aren't being reliable. Guys aren't making themselves available at times. I think that's Brown's biggest issue, is sometimes just standing in the corner and not making himself available. You don't see him setting screens like Tatum does to make himself available sometimes when he gets off the ball. I mean, guys just need to do more right now to make themselves outlets for Tatum, because listen, like you said, Alex, Tatum's doing his job as a passer. He's reading those doubles. He's drawing extra defenders, and then he's whipping the ball out. And that's all he can really do sometimes when the defense is stacking up against him.
All right, Bobby, before we let you go, give us a prediction for tonight, a prediction for the series. Do you think the Celtics extend this to 7? And how do you think the Celtics best get out of this? You know, how do they get the win in the series? What's the number one thing?
Grant's got to wake up. I mean, we remember he saved the Celtics against Milwaukee with that massive Game 7. I'm stunned he's been a no-show in these finals because the Warriors are smaller. I think the bigger teams give him issues sometimes at his position. There's really no excuse why he can't even get into the post for an easy bucket here or there against them and, you know, make some of those dribble drives where he's grown as a playmaker in his own right. So he's got to be out there. Yeah, I mean, we talk about Tatum's struggles. The story of the season has been Grant making himself an outlet for Tatum, a guy that he can hit again and again on the opposite side for threes or whatever he's able to produce once he catches that ball. So he's got to be a big part of the rotation tonight, I think. He needs to get a shot or two early to feel involved and confident and you know, not get lost in Green going after him or some of the other things that have probably affected the Celtics mentally here. I don't feel great about them winning this series. But their defense, I think, is played at an underrated high level, holding the Warriors, I think, to under 100 points per 100 in the half court in every game now in this series. So they have figured out Curry a little bit in this last game. That was underrated. I think there's just going to be a high intensity. And again, this team's been at its best when you've felt at your worst about them. So I feel good about this going 7. Going back out to San Francisco, though, and again, this Warriors team that has all this experience, that has guys stepping up in different spots, whether it's Porter, Green, Thompson last game I thought was great. There's an intangible thing with Golden State that I feel like I underrated because I came into the series saying these aren't the old Warriors. They're more than beatable. But this hasn't been the Celtics just shooting themselves in the foot and falling all over themselves like I felt like it was in the Heat series, where the Heat did not give a good effort to compete in that series, but still took it 7. The Warriors, I think, have adjusted, ran different lineups, gotten contributions from a bunch of different players, and their defense, there's a reason it was number 2 in the league right up there with the Celtics, and they forced a lot of these mistakes on the Celtics. So I think the Warriors ultimately end up taking this in 7. That's where I'm at right now.
Well, I like that you gave the Warriors some credit because I think a lot of people around here, and we as Boston sports fans, we tend to get into that, right? Where it's all our team's fault, right? Like it's all the Celtics' fault that they're in this position. And I've read a lot of things, not to call out anybody that you work with and Alex works with down there, but I've read a lot of things about how the Celtics have blown this series. And it's like the Warriors are the Warriors. Like that's a really good team that they're playing up against. And there might be some things that they could have gone back and done differently, certainly at home in game 4 with the 2-1 lead. That hopefully that game, you would have hoped that game would have gone a little bit differently. But all in all, Steph Curry is still fantastic. Andrew Wiggins,
he stole game 4. I mean, that was the best Steph Curry game I've ever seen.
Yeah.
He was incredible. And the Celtics made mistakes down the stretch. We talked about the jump shots they were taking, but coming out of that game, that was more of a story of what Curry did in that moment than what the Warriors did. And the Celtics would have been up 3-1 at that point. So that was huge. The Celtics did not respond well to it last game. And the Warriors, I think, have had more responses in this series as a whole. But again, they're healthy for the first time all season, effectively, Golden State. Yeah. And that's an underrated storyline coming in this as well. I talked to Steve Kerr about that yesterday, and I was like, what's with all this experimenting in the finals? You don't think a coach is just going to be trying all these different lineups at this stage of the season? And he said, we didn't have Peyton since round 2. We didn't have Iguodala since round 1. All these different guys that have stepped back into the fold, and they've had a lot of contributors here, and they're deeper. I think that is a legitimate advantage that they have, and their experience. I think Ime's probably going to regret coming into this series, and people loved it saying the experience is overrated, but it has come into play in many spots here. Remember game 1? Celtics were hitting everything in that game. They win it. That flowed in the game too. First quarter, the Celtics were excellent. And Green just kind of sticks his chest into Tatum, starts some of those antics, gets Boston a little rattled. And I think those are just some of the intangible things a championship team has. And he mucked up the series in a way that I think has disrupted the Celtics ever since.
Well, that doesn't not real optimistic here, Bobby. All right, we had you on to kind of tell us that the Celtics.
I said they're going to win tonight.
All right, fair
Heaven's
enough.
A coin flip.
Fair enough. So there's an official Bobby Manning prediction. The Celtics win Game 6. Game 7, not so much. Bobby, we appreciate you coming on. A lot of fun. Make sure to plug where everybody can follow you and follow your Celtics coverage tonight.
Yeah, at Real Bob Manning on Twitter. All our videos out of the Garden are at Celtics CLNS. And of course, do post game at least one more time on CLNS Media and Celtics All Access. So go check out those YouTube channels. And we're doing a Dome Theory right after this. Dome Theory podcast going live at 2:15 with Mo DeKeel, and he'll get into some of the X's and O's, former video coordinator in the NBA, and just see where it's going wrong for the Celtics offensively right now.
Yeah, I love Mo. He's a great follow. Teaches me a ton about the game. So that will be really awesome. And make sure to go check out Bobby's coverage on Celtics CLNS throughout the rest of the NBA Finals. Hopefully 2 more games of Bobby's coverage for the Celtics in the NBA Finals. But for us here on Patriots Beat, we'll be back on Tuesday, Q&A edition of the show on Tuesday afternoon. We'll do a Boston Sports Minute. We'll either pour one out for the Celtics or be celebrating, but it'll be exciting nonetheless on Tuesday. So until next time, signing off for Alex Barth, our special guest here, Bobby Manning. I'm Evan Lazar. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll see you next week.